Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, five-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where our team works together like a group of escaped zoo animals from Madagascar. Everyone's got their own wild style, but somehow it's an adventure that always ends in success. I know. You got some penguins on your team? A little comic relief? Love that. Well, I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Have you ever wondered why some high-performing teams suddenly fall apart? Things look so good from the outside, but inside it's a little more like a reality TV show. Unexpected alliances, some dramatic plot twists, some weasel stealing office snacks or leaving dirty coffee cups in the sink. Okay, maybe a little more serious than that. What are some things that can kill even the best teams? They are so sneaky, most leaders don't even see them coming. Because if we did, we'd stop it, but we don't. Last time we talked about trust, communication, and diversity as required elements for high performing teams. Great teams that work well together are the backbone of successful companies, especially in this fast paced world of tech startups where things are changing constantly. But when those are missing or out of balance, even the strongest teams can become dysfunctional. And the result? Decreased productivity, high turnover, and a toxic work environment that just crushes innovation. Ugh, don't want that. So let's explore 3 sneaky factors that destroy high performing teams. The first one I call the say do gap. Trust is the foundation of any high performing team. We talked about that last time. And when trust is absent, team members become hesitant to share ideas, take risks, or collaborate effectively. And that leads to a culture of suspicion, micromanagement, and fear of failure. Leaders undermine trust when we give lip service to values that don't really exist. Core values that no one lives by. Maybe they're in a drawer. Maybe there's something we made up a long time ago and said, here's our core values, and nobody paid attention to it after that. It's like saying time off is important and then not taking any and making some side comments about those who do, asking for input and dismissing it, doing our own thing anyway, or saying we want ideas and then stomping all over them because they aren't fully baked yet when they're proposed. When what we say doesn't align with what we do, that's the say do gap, trust falls apart. And as a leader, you have to own it. I have to own it. And we've got to make sure that authenticity and transparency rule. Don't get stuck in that gap, that mismatch. The second one is schisms. That's a weird word, isn't it? And I chose it intentionally because it's weird. It makes your brain go, what? Schisms. It literally means disagreement, dissent, factions. And this one may be the most insidious. It's best described as backchannel conversations, alliances, gossip, and all the political crap that we probably moved away from in those big companies and started our own. We're like, oh, we don't want that stuff. But it happens, in big companies, small companies, it happens everywhere. It's those little things, hey, can you believe that? Don't repeat this, but or between you and me, that person, yeah, don't let that happen in your company as a leader. Don't do it, and warn your team about it. Encourage disagreement and dissent in appropriate meetings, but when a decision is made, the team has to be aligned. No schemes, no gossip, no backbiting, no secret alliances. That monster kills teams, and left unchecked, it grows up to become something that is just disgusting. Kill monsters while they're small. Don't treat them as pets. Don't feed them. Don't let them grow up, especially that one. Make sure that those no schisms, no political alliances, none of that gossip and backbiting. And the third one, another weird word, homogeneous teams. Homogeneous just means the same, but it's another one that's like, makes the brain think. And this happens when a leader hires people just like them. And I see this all the time. I did this in early companies because I didn't know what else to do. It's like, hey, I like me. So, they're like me. So they must be good. And we see this a lot. Maybe it's type A only people. Maybe it's, salespeople are really good at sales, so they hire salespeople just like them. Maybe it's an engineer, somebody that has that engineer mind. Maybe it is only from a specific industry. They've got to come from this industry because that's where the good people are. Or it's a single ethnic group. I see this, and it's all sorts of different types of companies. And it's like, well, they're like me, so I'm going to hire them. And we all like people who are like us. It's a natural thing. And a lot of it's because we like us. And so, like I said, it's one of those things that we look at it and we go, yeah, they're like me, so they must be good. Another way that this happens is hiring people who just say yes and agree with us. They don't have any backbone, they don't have any pushback. They're just like, yeah, okay, I'll go do that. It makes us feel pretty good as leaders when, we say jump and they just jump. But a homogeneous team can lead to groupthink, where innovative ideas are stifled or non existent, and problem solving becomes very limited very quickly because we all see things the same way. Without diverse perspectives, teams may struggle to adapt to new challenges or identify creative solutions. So embrace diversity by building teams with varied backgrounds, different skills, different viewpoints. We need people who push back. Look for that. Yeah, I want somebody who wants to question, and it can be incredibly frustrating and incredibly valuable, especially when I get past my own stuff and listen when they push back or disagree. We want people who can disagree without being completely disagreeable curmudgeons. Encourage a culture where different ideas are valued and leveraged for better decision making. Recognizing and addressing these issues early is crucial to maintaining a cohesive, productive team. Be on guard. Don't let these little monsters grow up. Our founder on Tuesday was Albert Owusu Asare, co-founder and CEO of Kadana, a global payments provider. We talked about the challenges of building an international business, hiring and paying remote employees, and all the twists and turns of the founder journey. Our expert guest last week was Darius Lahutafard, best-selling author and pioneer of the MEDIC sales methodology. We talked about transitioning from a functional role all the way up to CEO, mistakes along the way, and of course, sales. If you want to boost revenue without pain, check out MEDIC and this episode. My guest today is Jordan Burton, co-founder of Talgo. Jordan has a rather unusual job. He is a professional interviewer. Over the past 17 years, he's conducted several hundred multi-hour interviews with CEOs and other C-level candidates on behalf of major private equity firms and corporate boards. He has leveraged those experiences to train the leadership teams of top VC, PE investors, and high-growth companies to become exceptional at hiring and interviewing. At Talgo, Jordan manages relationships with industry giants like Sequoia Capital, TH Lee, and Palantir Technologies, helping them master the art of interviewing and talent acquisition. Welcome someone who helps us qualify and hire the best talent, Jordan Burton. Hey, Jordan, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, how did you transition from a career in consulting and entrepreneurship to specializing in talent assessment and training?
Well, it was a big left turn in my career. There was a former boss that I had who told me about this data-driven approach to assessing CEOs and senior level execs that was, taking over the private equity world. And he stayed on me for about 2 or 3 years. He was very patient, which is a good best practice when you're trying to source talent through your networks. But I think it sort of captivated my entrepreneurial nature. There was a big unmet need to help people become better at picking the right leaders, of like, how do you actually get better at talent assessment? And really, it was an offer I couldn't refuse at the end of the day.
I think it's a really smart way to look at it. And what are the challenges or pitfalls of traditional non-data driven interviewing process compared to doing something that is data driven?
So many to mention.
I think most of us do it that way, though.
That's right. I mean, the vast majority of interviewing is really bad. And I
Yeah.
would say the most common culprits, one would be a lack of coordination as a team, where you put a leader through 4 or 5 or 6 or 12 redundant conversations, asking the same kinds of bad questions over and over. Candidates rehearse their answers and get better. as the stakeholders get more and more senior in the
Yep.
process. But I would say beyond that, to the data driven point, the thing that we're usually combating is this notion that an interview is a performance. That
Hmm.
a candidate shows up, I ask some magic question, and they launch on some 2 to 5 minute diatribe about themselves, and I'm supposed to just pick up whether this person has it or not. Viewing it as kind of like I'll have this intuition or this gut feel. Data
Right.
driven interviewing is about like let's actually learn about them. Where have they been? What have they done? And how relevant is that for what we're looking to hire them to do?
So from the outside looking in, and I think you're exactly right. We do it by gut feel, but I think we disguise it as being data driven. Or like, oh no, I looked at their resume, asked them about their experience, and it's a very methodical process. But is that really true, or are we fooling ourselves?
There's usually you're fooling yourself. Like most interviewers, if you
Yeah.
look at the end of the day, it's like I have formed a judgment, and now I'm looking for the data points that support my judgment. I think the litmus test, and this is one of those sort of process recommendations we make to companies, is look at the actual artifacts you've created when you are sitting down as a team to make a go no go decision on a hire. Are you looking at a set of facts about this person? Are you looking at stories from their past of, let's say it's a revenue role? Are we looking at the deals that they've landed, how they landed them, how that compared to expectations? Are we talking about substantive things that either did or did not happen in this person's past? Or are these artifacts saying things like, well, they really had a crisp answer to this question, or I can just really see them working out in this role, or I just love the way that she did X, Y, or Z? That's not data. We really do want to see what are the verifiable facts about this person that we can use to make an informed decision.
So, what are the most common traits you look for that indicate a strong fit for a leadership role?
Well, it's interesting. A big part of our philosophy is fit to role. There is no universal, great fit for every role. There are certainly hallmarks that it's going to be rare when we don't care about those things. So if you're talking about a leadership role in a high growth SaaS business, we certainly want to see a certain level of drive and ambition. We want to know that this person is enthusiastic about their career and about making great things happen. That they are the kind of person who hires well, manages performance of their teams, supports, removes obstacles for those team members, develops them in their career growth, is able to quickly redirect, whether that's reallocation or removal when someone's not performing well. But if you take something like strategic thinking, critically important in some roles, and frankly not that important in other roles. Some roles are more about
Yeah,
execution. So we try to steer companies away from saying, here are the 5 things you're always looking for. It's just different for every role in every company.
that makes sense. And having that fit is so important. And it's not one size fits all. Just because somebody was a fit at some other company that, might or might not be similar doesn't necessarily mean they're a fit for the role that we have and the culture that we have in our own organizations.
That's right. And I would say for earlier stage high growth SaaS businesses, what we a common feature, we recommend creating a one pager document that says these are the results we want this person to deliver. These are the actual tangible, the business impact we want to see once we've brought on the right person. And then a short list of like really important qualities, competencies, traits that we want in the right leader. For a high growth SaaS business, you're typically going to be talking about somebody who is willing to do a lot without a huge amount of resources. So you want to make
Right.
sure that part of that document outlines the kind of things that if you have somebody coming from a very large organization with a lot of resources, that we're going to naturally put some curbs in place or be skeptical of those who've always been surrounded by a tremendous amount of infrastructure. So that's the kind of thing that the fit to role notion needs to accommodate. We have fewer resources. This is a leaner team. You're going to need to be, both leading through others and doing some work yourself. Those are the kind of things you want to codify in that one pager.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I'm sure somebody could look at this and say, hiring is, it's a human process. There's emotions in there. It is gut feel, and you could not possibly make it completely data driven. But I think your process is pretty rock solid. So, how have you created an end-to-end solution for data-driven interviewing through Talgo, and how has it changed the hiring process?
Absolutely. I mean, I can walk you through the highest level. The devil's in the details, and our training
Of
programs
course.
really go deep on all the how of this. But at the highest level, hiring is essentially these kind of five activities, five steps in the process. You got to clarify success. You got to be clear on what you're hiring for. Sounds obvious, but many companies do a poor job at this step. They essentially create kind of a boilerplate list of like, this is what we think a great sales leader, this is what we think a great finance leader, or this is what we think a good engineering individual contributor. Regardless of role, there's just a genericness to that. We want to get crisp and say, what does success look like here? How will we know when we've got the right person? Step one.
So good. And I've made that mistake multiple times
Oh,
of thinking the job description that yeah, that's the role. But what do you
yeah.
really want them to do? What does success look like? I don't know. Doing the thing.
You're not alone. A significant number of hiring mistakes come down to a misalignment of stakeholders on what success means in the role. So part
Yeah.
of our program is really building skill in crisp articulation of the business impact this person's going to have. And you may say, how do I do that for an individual contributor engineer? Totally possible. We've worked with dozens of companies in clarifying that, and these don't look the same from one company to the next.
Yeah.
Just continuing on step two, the mistake we
Yes.
see here. So sourcing, top of funnel. The biggest mistake we see businesses, high growth SaaS and otherwise, most of our work is in SaaS, but regardless of industry or size, is an over reliance on job postings, ads, essentially. If you look at high performers, and we know this because we've interviewed lots of high performers in our role as executive assessors, people tend, especially early in their careers, to move through their networks. They get pulled in by colleagues or people who know them or know of them, happy bosses, happy clients. There's this moving through your networks to where if you are trying to access these people through a job post, you're never even going to see them. They're not even looking there. So you need to have a
Right.
strategy around how you're going to connect to find them. And we're really big on saying this is not hiring people you know. This is leveraging those people you do know as connectors to find the right talent 1 degree removed. There's a much larger and more diverse set of candidates, simply 1 degree removed. Just network with the high performers who represent that diversity in your network.
I like
Um,
that.
3 of 5, if I can keep rolling on.
Yes,
Right?
please do.
This is the assessment part. And as I indicated before, so many mistakes companies make in this, but the biggest ones are like redundant interviews, asking the same questions over and
Yeah.
over, and trying to cover everything at once as opposed to specializing. And frankly, a major problem here is also the quality of connection we build with the candidate. We talk about leveraging fascination, using this, your curiosity, your warmth as a person to be insatiably curious to learn about the candidate. They're going to share more information and they're going to have a better time. They're going to be more likely to take your opportunity over some other opportunity where people were interrogative with them, where they were bullying with them, where they were putting them through stress interviews, or whether they were poorly coordinated. If you build this great connection with people, you get better data and you get more yeses. uh,
Yes.
our curriculum, if you look at what we train, a big part of what we do is just the art and the science of great interviewing. How do you form this connection with the person in a short period of time and ask what questions do you ask? What follow ups do you ask? Where do we dig in these stories to really unlock what is this person's greatness and what is this person's failure modes? What are the situations that don't bring out their best? So that's step three. Step four, you got to make a decision, of course. And here, back to the sort of like specialization, rather than making a decision based upon my one interaction with a candidate, I want to harness all the data that all of my team members as specialists have gotten in the areas where they went deep. So this is something that's rather controversial and unconventional, but we would say you shouldn't be asking interviewers, do you want to hire this person or not, based on your interview. The moment you do that, everyone tries to cover everything. We're back to redundant interviews. And there's
Right.
not enough time to cover anything anyway. So I fill in the blanks with my bias. Do I like this person? Did they perform well? Do I get a good feeling? So, group decision making, data driven decision making, let's all look at each other's notes and piece together this entire human puzzle, really. And then the final step is selling. And I would say selling is not something you do at the end, it's something that comes throughout. The mistake we see here really is people telling a candidate a story based on why they joined the company. You may have key team members at your organization today that are very clearly about the equity upside, frankly. They may be
Sure.
there because there is career advancement for them. They may just be there because it's a lot of fun and they love what they're doing. All of those things are valid. There's a number of reasons why people joined your company. For this candidate, let's learn what it is for them. Let's use the
Yeah.
information that we gathered in learning about their past and learning about their stories to put that puzzle together and say, wow, for this person, it's about autonomy and freedom. And we definitely offer freedom and autonomy for this particular design role or product role. Let's make sure we double down on that message and sell them in a compelling way throughout the process. It's an evolving map that they're giving us of what's going to make them say yes. Let's play that back when it's time to.
I like that. It's very structured. It's very different than most interview processes for sure.
Yeah, the tricky part is each one of those steps requires very specific tools and skills. Our business is all about providing those tools and skills. We have like templates for each one of these things that where you can actually very systematically, it's not heavy process. It's pretty lightweight. It's actually for high growth, smaller businesses. But you can actually do each one of these steps as a team with some of the guidance around the how. And that's what we built a business around and what we're excited to bring to the market.
I like that. Well, you mentioned that just the importance of understanding the context of the role in the hiring process. I mean, how do you make sure that that context is clearly defined and communicated during the interview process so that they select themselves in, or if they're not a fit, they see that and go, "This is not for me," and select themselves out.
Yeah, that's a really great question. We talked about this internal definition of the role that we use that really defines success around results and around these very differentiated competencies that define the role in the company. There's also, of course, external communication. You want, regardless of whether you're going through your networks or using some other means of sourcing, candidates need to know about the role. What we see go wrong here is 5-page documents with boilerplate predictable bullet points, like trying to exhaustively cover every single thing you might be doing in a very boring way.
Right.
This list of really predictable traits. Hey, we're looking for proactive team players. Who isn't?
Right. Right. Is it? Do you even have to say that?
What we recommend doing with that external communication, this is an opportunity to inspire, right? And what people are typically find inspiring, especially people who are drawn to high growth opportunities, is what is this organization out to do? And what is my role going to be in delivering on that? So we like having a really meaningful upfront narrative, not a super long one, but a crisp one that says, here's what is awesome about us, what we're trying to do in the world, the why behind it, and here is how this role plays into that. It's not a one size fits all, but something that really is like a human narrative that says, wow, this is something really exciting and interesting. And then when you're talking about the specifics of the role, paint a picture, talk about here's the kinds of things that would be happening. There's a lot of innovation in this space. We see things happening with video job descriptions, and there's lots of ways to captivate, audiences with short attention spans. Crisp, short, don't try to cover everything. And finally, to your point around self-selection and getting the right kind of person, it's okay to say what's hard. If this
Yeah.
role involves a lot of travel, if this role involves peak periods of significant intensity, if this role involves potential pivots, let them know. It will attract the right kind of people and it will turn off. You'll have the ones who are not drawn to those environments self-select out. You save yourself a lot of time.
Is that like a distinguishing point between those that kind of struggle with talent acquisition or the right fit, and those that have a really good hiring process, especially in high growth? Because there are things that people would not want, and so
Yeah.
being upfront about those, it seems like would be really helpful instead of
thinking, we need to cast a wider net?
It's very hard. A lot of the founders that we work with, and I mean, a significant portion of our work is with venture-backed companies and the founding teams. Is you by definition almost you haven't done all of these roles yourself. You may not know what great looks like in a design role if you've come up through engineering. You may have an intuition around it. You may have seen bad before, right? But you may not know what are the
Right.
hallmarks to really get my first design hire right. And if you've come up through the sales side, you may not know anything around the product side at all. You can
Right.
certainly lean on the people in your networks, whether it's your investors or advisors or colleagues who know those roles better. At the end of the day, there's a business reason why you're making this hire. Something isn't happening that you need to happen. It may be as simple as I don't know what a great process for incorporating customer feedback into the product pipeline looks like. I may not know every best practice. All I know is that our customers feel like we're not listening to them, and we're approaching some churn right now because we're sort of Steve Jobsing it by just coming up with something cool and hoping they buy it. So I know that my product leader needs to be tightly connected with the sales team, or with the whole go to market organization, and have a process for bringing that feedback in. How will I know that's done? We don't lose opportunities based upon poor gathering and use of customer feedback. There's a business reason. So you don't have to be a master at knowing that process to know I don't want to lose deals because I'm not listening to customers.
Ready to dominate your market and skyrocket your revenue? Dive into Small Fish, Big Pond, building a world class business that swims circles around competitors. This book is packed with powerful marketing and leadership lessons guaranteed to transform your business and operate world class. Small Fish, Big Pond delivers powerful strategies to sharpen your marketing message, deliver unmatched value to your clients, and guide your prospects' buying journey to one inevitable conclusion: that your company is the only solution for them. Inside, you'll find step by step frameworks and time tested growth principles to attract your ideal clients, convert them, and then transform them into passionate brand ambassadors for your brand. Get your copy today in print, ebook, or audio at smallfishbigpond.com or Amazon. Plus, remember, every book sale supports charity. So dive in and make a difference.
I think it takes some significant clarity just to understand what it is that you're looking for in
Mhm.
those roles.
For
And
sure.
just like I said, if you have a sales background, you don't necessarily know engineering. Work with a lot of those who work with a lot of companies that they're engineers and now they're hiring sales and operations and finance. And how do you help train them to differentiate between signal and noise in candidate responses, particularly when they don't have expertise in those functional areas?
Sure. Well, there's kind of two parts of this. I'll hit on the first one, which is around clarity in the role. So, our program, Talgo On Demand, basically you walk through this curriculum and then you have some live experiences learning with us. There's a set of questions that we provide that say, if you answer these questions about the role, you'll have a version one of this role definition. You can look at this one pager and say, yes, if this happens, I'm happy with the hire. You can run through those questions. There's a number of them. There's great different ways of asking yourself what you're looking for. But once you've gone through that with yourself and your co-founders or your colleagues, whoever's stakeholders in the hire, you'll know what you're looking for in terms of business impact. Then when it's time to meet with candidates, even if you're not technical, you can walk through the stories of their past and learn about similar impacts that they have had or frankly haven't had in their past and judge whether that looks like a fit for what you're doing. So, for example, let's say this is an engineering leadership role. We're going to be hiring our first real, like, call it VP engineering type person to guide this team and get things built, get things shipped. We know that what we need is we have a certain cadence in terms of our development cycles. We know the amount of multitasking, how many different projects engineers need to be working on in our environment based upon our strategy, based upon our product. So there are hallmarks. It may be around quality. It may be around the type of products that someone is building, where even as a non-technical person, you can walk through someone's history and see, are they the kind of person who is doing 3 development projects at once on 2-week cycles with this measure of quality and with this frequency of engagement with product teams or go-to-market teams or designers or whatever it may be. A layperson can do that if you think about it in terms of the business impact as opposed to the code, right?
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, it would be important if you've got a principal engineer on board who is not the right candidate to be leading the whole team, but a very good engineer, that person can walk them through a coding skills interview and verify that they do meet the mark technically. I would not recommend a person with a sales background trying to run a coding skills interview, right?
Sure.
But there's absolutely a place for you as the founder or the CEO or the head of sales or whatever your role may be. If you're a key stakeholder in this engineering leadership role, absolutely interview them, and you can find the business impacts in their story and determine the relevance.
Yeah. I like that you have different team members really focusing on different parts of the interview. And it isn't, like you said at the beginning, it's not running them through the same process over and over and over again with the same scripted questions.
The vast majority of your interviews should be specialist interviews. Specialist meaning one team member is going deep on these aspects of interpersonal change management, cross-functional influence. This other team member is going to be going deep on technical skills. This other team member is going to go really deep on team leadership and mentoring. We play different roles. We are free in our interviews to be specialists and go deep rather than go broad. If you look at the end of your interview process, you end up with so much more information. And instead of everyone hearing the same story about what happened in Ohio in 2014 5 times, we each have a
Right.
different version of the Ohio story. That's a waste. And the candidate didn't enjoy that either, right?
Right. And then how do we get that together at the end? Because everybody has their own opinions, but it's not a, do you want to hire this person?
Yeah.
How do we bring those different perspectives together to come to that decision of, it's a yes or it's a no?
Yeah, we actually showcase in our program what some of the decision-making tools are. To put it at a high level again, without the details on how to do this, what we want to see is that when we come together as a team, that we are reviewing a aggregated set of facts, of stories, of things from this person's past. Of course, if there's a coding skills or problem-solving interview, we certainly want to see the data points that came out of that. They came up with the solution. They only needed a nudge in this part of it. They were able to code it up. It was the correct code. There was one mistake on this thing, but that's fine. The rest of the interviews, you want to be looking at 2 things. Ratings. We want to have some rubric, some standards to say what is at threshold, what's way above threshold, what's below threshold for this component of the role. So we want to be looking at ratings across each one of these items in our role definition. We call them facets. We want ratings for each facet. Not everyone is rating every facet, but if you were assigned these 3 facets, we want to see a rating. And those ratings should be backed by data. Data in the form of, this person did this at this role under these constraints with this kind of a result. And here's how it calibrates relative to like actual stories from this past that back up that rating. That's, you're making data-driven decisions when you come to the table with ratings and data points behind them.
It's really helpful because a lot of times you do get to the end, and even if we have some sort of rating system, everybody kind of has their own thing, and it's not driven. They have heard that same story about what happened in 2014 in Ohio, and so they've come to some conclusion on that, but it's not relevant, and it still comes down to gut feel.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny how gut feel can creep in even with the best of intentions.
Right.
It's something that even people in the executive assessment world, you're constantly trying to manage. Am I skewing my perspective? Am I skewing my interpretation of this anecdote based upon what I know about this prior employer that we were talking about? We all have those things that we grade on the curve when we see a certain school or a certain employer and their background. You got to be vigilant about it. You need to make sure that we look objectively. Do we see evidence here, or are we filling in the gaps with things that we project based upon everything we brought into that interview from our past.
And how do we do that? How do we overcome that bias or those like preconceived ideas of what the person is going to be like based on those other factors and really get down
Yeah.
to the root?
One of the skills that's in the Talgo On Demand program is around creating an interview guide. We call it a facet interview. How do I create a question or a set of questions to go after cross-functional leadership? How do I create a set of questions to go after ability to grow and mentor and develop team members, or any number of things, or detail orientation, willingness to roll up their sleeves? There's a set of best practices. You can create an interview guide for anything. The important thing is to create that interview guide. What that interview guide is, it is a standard set of questions that you're going to ask every candidate. If you look at all the research on good and bad interviewing, you will see a clear edge that having a standardized approach across candidates brings. So learn how to create a facet interview guide, use it consistently across candidates for the same role. Obviously, different interview guides for different roles, but every candidate who's coming in for head of RevOps is going to need to have, this specific interview. These are the questions to run them through. That helps you take your thumb off the scale with certain candidates. We know that they've all gone through the same thing. I would also say that just the simple act of taking notes. We actually type when we're doing executive assessments. We encourage our clients to have some means of taking notes. If you're going to use AIs, there are some really great note takers, but just make sure that you're in compliance with law around, candidates consenting to it and whatnot. But the simple fact of capturing notes can also check your bias, because now you can see in the record, where have I filled in the blanks, or what actually did the candidate actually say? Did I assume?
That's good.
Or did the candidate actually say something different?
That's really smart. Just having that kind of an objective voice
That's right.
is part of the process.
Absolutely.
So I like that comparison. Well, you've worked with some pretty big VC companies, Palantir, Sequoia, as well as other big companies.
Mhm.
What is the difference in hiring in those types of situations where you're dealing with a company that's funded versus bootstrapped, and how you go about sourcing talent and getting those on board?
Sure. It's interesting. I would say even for the ones that are VC backed, there's certainly, if you're looking at seed stage or early stage, companies need to be resourceful for quite a while. By the time they're getting really big money and they have more of a recruiting brand, the game does change. But most of our work is in earlier stage companies, at least
Okay.
when we're talking about advising leaders and founders. What I would say is a failure mode here. There's an interesting thing that happens in the arc of a high growth business. In early days, when you're truly bootstrapping it and you may even pre-seed, it may be friends and family and your own bucks, you have no choice but to take talent acquisition personally and to do it yourself. You are the chief talent officer of your company, like it or not. There's no one else to pitch it over to.
Sure.
And we actually see, with the exception of the fact that a lot of people are hiring in their own image and hiring their friends, and we start to get monocultures, at least you tend to go immediately for the people that that you can trust. So you make either a co-founder decision or some early hiring decisions that work out pretty well, because you're forced to kind of go through your networks, right? But then
Right.
something happens in the inflection point. You get your first meaningful check that enables you to delegate this part of it. And we see a lot of founders get tripped up when they hire their first recruiter. That recruiter may be fine. They may not be the problem. The real problem is that you've now you've removed ownership from yourself and given it to a person who, by virtue of their title, is joining an ocean of other recruiters trying to go after the same talent. If you talk to a high performing engineer, how many times do they get hit up by a recruiter about a new opportunity? Even in this market, it's a lot. The high performers, word gets out. In peak markets, they could get 3 to 5 points of outreach per day.
Easily.
What turns their head? Wow, it's the CEO of this company backed by this whoever that I know. Or honestly, the thing that turns their head the most, it's a friend of Amy's. Amy's awesome. Any friend of Amy's, I'm going to make time with. So we
Yeah.
encourage a founder in this spirit of bootstrapping and being scrappy, never take off your recruiter hat. You need to be a talent scout always. And when you hire that first recruiter, good on you. That's great. They're your partner. They're not your outsourcer. They're your
I
partner
like that.
to help you and your colleagues find great talent, take the outreach personally. We love having recruiters partnered with business leaders to help mine their networks and find great talent. But when it comes time to connect with this potential high performer, make it the friend of Amy's rather than the nameless recruiter who's part of a million other recruiters. Right.
Yeah, that's really, really good. Just to think about it that way, and you really want those warm introductions.
Absolutely.
What is your take on somebody that is working versus somebody who's not? Do you see a difference in candidate quality, or do you recruit people who are not working to really seek those out, or do you really look for people that are in roles to be able to take them out and put them into a new role?
Sure. It's a great question. It's an important one. Everything is it's a bell curve. So if you were to take the distribution of performance for, let's call them passive and active candidates, active are like don't have a job, actively looking for one. Passive candidate,
Right.
doing great in my current role, not looking. If you were to take a bell curve of performance for those two, yes, you will see that the passive candidates tend to be higher performers. There's a reason why all of the recruiting firms and recruiters out there talk about access to passives, access to passives. That's really where you get great talent. Great talent doesn't tend to be on the bench for a long time, right?
Yeah.
That said, there are people who are actively looking who don't have a job who may be great. There may be other circumstances in their life that have led to the situation that they're in. I wouldn't ignore or immediately shun somebody who's actively looking. But we
Sure.
talk about skewing your mix towards passives for sure. Back to this thing around they move through their networks. They're not really on the market for long. You need a strategy that's going to get their attention while they're employed. So don't give them a 2-day take home exercise. You're skewing your mix towards active candidates. If you give your engineers this massive take home problem, it's annoying. It's inhuman. They don't like it. It feels like free consulting. And the ones who are going to do the best are the ones who don't have a day job, right? So
Yeah.
let's be really empathetic with the passives and be like, I know you don't have a lot of time. We're going to make sure you get outreach from really the people you want to be connecting with. We're going to leverage your time. We're going to make it an efficient two-way get to know you process. You're going to love it, but we're going to be accommodating your schedule.
What is your take on doing those kinds of things where you give them a project or have them some sort of a test project or something like that for the role they're coming into?
We generally see the world of candidate assessment, or let's just call it interviewing. We would kind of split it into two buckets. There is behavioral and there's performance or, watching the candidate actually do something in front of you. We don't like things that are, when you talk about the performance side of it, we don't like things that a candidate who's just smart and savvy or one who's doing a whole lot of interviewing because they are actively looking is going to do better at. If it's solving a problem in front of you, an intellectually demanding problem, a technical problem, a business problem, valid. We like those. There are some best practices. But on the behavioral side, that's asking about the person, where they've been, what they've done, the facts of their past. We like
Mhm.
having a portfolio of those. We see an over reliance on this. Let's have them go away and do some work on their own and show up and impress us. The problem with that is, again, the active versus passive candidate problem we already spoke of, especially
Yep.
when you do it early. If I'm a high performer and I'm just getting to know you and you're asking me to carve off multiple hours on my own, no, thank you, right? Also,
Right.
missed opportunity. If I can actually be in the room while you're solving this problem, it's a much richer data source to see how you think and how you diagnose and unpack these problems to make it a live experience. Make it shorter, make it
Yeah.
something interactive, do it in front of them. The other thing is we just see people do it too early in the process. Let's have some human connections. It really builds some rapport with the person. If this is a person who's going to be, a big part of their job is going to be presenting your product out on the road. you may want to include something that involves a similar kind of thing. I would do it later in the process and keep the burden, the time commitment relatively low to avoid, again, skewing your mix. We want to make this something
Yeah.
that the high performers who have day jobs find it just as accessible to do it. I would generally say most hires, you don't need to do the whole song and dance of having them show up and perform. It's too noisy. You see people who are slick and savvy who can put on a good show and then don't eventually
Yeah.
perform. Let's learn about their performance and find out that they actually aren't great performers rather than base it on this little artificial thing that they might do well once.
Yeah, I like it at the very end. If it's something and it doesn't fit for all the roles, but occasionally it does. And
Yeah.
but I like it at the very end if it's separating between two candidates or this is somebody we want to move forward with and just want to make sure. And I like making them paid as well, so it's not something that's free.
Yeah, I think, and critically, like ensuring that whatever the thing that they're going to be doing, that's a big part of the job. It's
Right.
dumb to have somebody, hey, come do a product presentation when the role that's 5% of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Why bother?
Yeah, it better be like 90% of what
Yeah,
they're doing if,
for sure.
to go through all that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, in the data-driven process, how do you integrate humor and warmth into the interviews to create something that's really engaging and but also have that effective assessment?
sure. You asked about questions I haven't been asked before. I don't hear the word humor come up a lot, and it's a shame. Like this is fun. Like
It
learning
should be,
is
yeah,
fun, and there's moments of levity that you have in the course of any interview. Like, I would say we always talk about. We actually walk through the course of any interview. Like, how do you actually break up the time? And let's say it's a 1 hour interview. What do you spend your time doing? Be careful about talking about the big sports game. They may not care, and that we create monocultures when the way that we connect with candidates is about talking about something
yeah,
that we like, right? But have a human moment with them. Just learn about what's going on in their lives. Be curious, be interested. And certainly in the course of an interview, a candidate is often going to share something that's funny or interesting or just a human moment. And you want to connect with them, be there with like authentically, like, oh, that must have been crazy. We don't want to be too much passing judgment. Certainly don't laugh unless they're laughing. It may not be something that they thought was particularly funny. But if a
yeah.
candidate's having a moment around something, even an emotional moment, just connect with them. Part of great interviewing a huge part of it is just being a human being right alongside them. So we say like those are rapport juicers. Seize those opportunities to juice rapport in the interview by not even trying, just have a natural human connection. They said something funny, giggle with them.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's okay to have fun, and
Yeah,
I think that
it
that's
is.
really helpful in the interview process because it's stressful.
It is. And I mean, there's another opportunity thinking back to this kind of like macro structure of an interview that's in our program. There's a time at the end of the interview, of course, for the candidate to ask you questions and hear
Yeah,
about your story. They're going to have some questions prepared. Some of them may be things they think you want them to ask, which is kind of sad, but it happens, right?
yeah, it does.
Yeah. But they're also probably going to ask you a little bit about like, why'd you join? What do you like about this? Tell me what you're trying to get done. There's going to be some content that's about you. What a great opportunity to humanize yourself and really share. Hey, this is what I'm fired up about with this role and
Yeah.
otherwise. People connect and want to work with people that are full human beings. We want to make sure we steer clear of things that can get us into illegal question territory. We don't want to be talking, heavy content about our personal lives, things that tread into that territory, but at least just sharing a little bit about your humanity and your passion when it's time to talk about yourself.
Well, what emerging trends do you see in talent acquisition landscape, and especially remote work now, digital
Mhm.
transformation? A lot of changes over the last year and a half, particularly in the tech world.
For sure.
What does it look like going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the remote work thing feels like it was ancient history with the pandemic and everything else.
Right.
It's still having impacts for sure. I mean, there are companies that are very committed to the remote work. Some are making it work. Some are having real challenges. Some are trying to bring people back in and setting that expectation. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
we've been living in that world for so long. I feel like the answer to this question is AI. There is no doubt that AI is going to transform, frankly, everything. Uh, hiring is no exception. I think there's quite a bit already happening in terms of role definition, in terms of outreach for sure. There are bots going crazy, hitting people up left and right, trying to generate candidate flow. There's all sorts of companies that are thinking of different ways of automating and streamlining parts of the interview process. Some of it looks great. There's some companies that are doing things around helping you take better notes and make sense of your notes. Got to make sure that the AIs behind that aren't biased in their interpretation. But I think it would be naive to think that we're not going to live in a world in which AI is really adding value to and transforming the way that we do the whole data gathering part. I think we need to be prepared for a world in which AIs are actually doing interviewing, certainly at lower level roles. There's so much efficiency to be gained that shouldn't, however, give us license to be inhuman about it. I think the companies that bring a partnership of human and machine together are going to be the ones that maintain an edge and capture the efficiencies. We're paying a lot of attention to this space and we'll be investing in it ourselves. But this is the frontier. It's AI, I think, is my answer.
Yeah, excellent. Where can people learn more about you and about Talgo online?
Yeah, so we're at talgo.io. Talgo, by the way, talent algorithm. It's walking through these steps and sharing best practices, tools, templates, all the goodies you need to actually roll this out. This is a recipe for creating sustainable competitive advantage. If you follow these steps, you don't even have to cover all of it. You'll learn things that if you come away using 50% of it, you're going to have a massive edge and you're going to be getting an unfair share of great talent. But it's talgo.io, talgo.io. /TOD is where you find out about Talgo On Demand. By the way, another sort of slash here, SaaS Fuel will create a page for your listeners. They can get 30% off of Talgo On Demand. We'll have a code on that page that you can use to get our programs for 30% off. But
outstanding.
Just going to /TOD, you can learn about the three programs we have: the interviewer, the manager, and the founder. And if there's even a free course you can take, that's just kind of a fun way to immediately build some skills in the art of conversation and get around some tricky candidate situations that you've no doubt experienced in your interviewing career. So, please check us out. We have a lot of great stuff, and it is designed for high growth businesses. High growth SaaS is far and away our number one, middle of the sweet spot for us.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes, including the link talgo.io/SaaS Fuel.
That's right.
Excellent. Jordan, such a great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Jordan, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Jordan and Talgo at talgo.io. And remember, you can use the code SaaS Fuel to get 30% off. That's pretty awesome. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And of course, be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Full episodes, video shorts, trainings, lots and lots more there. A thought leader share. So share this episode with a fellow founder who has employees or needs to hire more awesome, diverse team members. Everyone who shares this week gets a balloon animal interview panel. New hires are interviewed by a panel of balloon animals expertly crafted by the HR team. Can your job candidates take the heat from a questioning giraffe or skeptical poodle? Yeah, maybe we should all just use Talgo instead. Remember, 30% off, use SaaS Fuel for the code there. Join us next Tuesday where our founder is Amarpreet Kalkat, founder of Humantic AI. We'll be talking about the role of AI in sales today, and more specifically, buyer intelligence. They are doing some amazing things over there. And next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we have JP Albano, co-founder and CEO of Significant Lifestyle Communities. They're managing over 60 million in assets. We'll be talking about how to invest profits from your SaaS, what to do with funds after exit to build and preserve wealth. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaS Fuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.